Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Hawks Watch podcast here. I'm very excited to kick this pod off. It's something I've been considering for quite a while. But as you know, the 23-24 season was a little bit rough and I never really got around to it there. But with the number one pick and with more, flexibility with that and potential for, a plan moving forward, better roster construction. It's very interesting surrounding the Hawks, what may happen in the next year. So just wanted to start off the pod here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about, who we may pick at number one, what they may do, what the needs are with our roster, and what the offseason may look like a little bit. But without further delay here, I will introduce myself a little bit. I am James Arnold. I am a local Hawks fan here in Atlanta. I am not a reporter of the Hawks. I don't cover the team professionally, but I do follow everything quite closely, I would say. I do plan to start releasing episodes every 2 to 4 weeks or so, just covering the major topics surrounding the Hawks. But again, without further delay, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to start off by talking about the number one pick and, who the Hawks may pick here. I'm going to start off with just going over, some pros or positives around the three major candidates and then questions and concerns around them as well. But the three major candidates, talk nationally, in mock drafts or reporters, nationally. These are the top three that I've really seen talked about, the Hawks looking to take. And so number one, of course, being Alex Sarr, Zachary Risache as well out of France, and Donovan Clingan from UConn. So I'm going to start with Alex Sarr here, and let's start with the positives and, what the main, attractions to taking him number one would be. So number one, just his size, his athleticism at 7'1", he is a very fast guy, very, for that size at 7'1", a truly crazy athlete. He's super quick, is able to move like 7'1" guys usually are not able to move. And just very athletic. And with that size, he has great tools. And with that becomes, a lot of upside with the tools that he has. Defensively, he's able to move his feet laterally. He's quick in a straight line. And he's able to stay in front of his man, whether that's a guard, or a little bit bigger of a player as well. He has the quickness there to guard out on the perimeter. And, really just something that the Hawks don't have other than with Jalen Johnson. There's a little bit of that. But, of course, Jalen's maybe 6'9" or so. And Alex Sarr's listed at 7'1". And, of course, we know what the Hawks' defense is a major question, let's just say, with their roster. They lacked a lot of size last year, so, taking Alex Sarr could be a great pick. Now, the questions are, his floor is not exactly, the highest. He's not a guy that's going to come in and immediately, be one of the, top 5 guys on the roster. He does have, questions about whether he can play center long term. Just with his physicality, he's a little bit skinny, hasn't really, played too much in the post versus big guys. He's always kind of played more like a wing. Um, you know, then on offense, there's a lot of questions as well. He really hasn't shown a whole lot there, especially, pairing him with Trey Young. You want a guy that, wants to run the pick and roll, sets good screens, gets Trey open for threes, rolls hard to the basket, and is able to finish. He hasn't shown a lot of that, and a lot of the offensive game really is theoretical. I'm not saying that it cannot happen, and I kind of do believe in his development there, but again, like, with the Hawks, you know, especially with Trey Young putting pressure on the front office and just where they're at, they really don't have picks in the next 3 years. So really they're in win now mode. And, Alex Sarr isn't necessarily the guy that's just going to come in and be great on both ends of the floor. I think he will, be pretty good defensively from the start, but offensively, there's going to be a lot of work to do, and I don't know that he's necessarily the best fit there with Trey. Not to say that he can't grow into that, but it's not exactly who you would want to pick. He doesn't have all the tools that you would exactly want to pick right now to start today with Trey Young. So there is some questions there as well, and that's kind of why there is some fluidity with who may be picked with this pick. I'm gonna go on to Zachary Risachet. He has a little bit, kind of some of the opposite problems, I would say, or questions with compared to Star in that, one, he does have a higher floor. I believe his skills and in just his position, really, he's a 6'10", maybe 6'9", 6'10" wing that has, solid defense and can shoot the ball. So these, 3-and-D wings are coveted around the league, and, he could fit anywhere. So just, right off the bat, probably has a bit of a, higher floor coming in straight away than someone like Sarr, who is, probably going to need some, more development. Not that Risachet doesn't need development, but he just can come in and kind of plug and play from day one. Now, with Risachet, you don't get the same upside that maybe you do with Sarr. So, it's a question. Do you want to take that guy at number one? Personally, for me, I'd be wanting to shoot for upside in the playoffs, especially, which I think, Sarr could provide with just his versatility and potential to become, one of these stretch bigs that is, truly a 7-footer, a Porzingis type, Chet Holmgren type, whatever it may be. I'm not saying that he would become as good as those guys, but just the archetype there could be quite intriguing, even if he doesn't develop the shot. Just being able to be so, versatile defensively, and then if you can get him to a solid enough point on offense, that is a very good player. So I just think there's more upside with Sarr, and personally, that's what I would shoot for. But again, there are other options. The Hawks are, probably in more of a win now mode than the record might have suggested. But again, going back to Risachet here, it seems he can shoot the three. I do believe in his shot. He has good defensive tools, and has shown a lot of ability to guard on ball pretty well. There are questions about, team defense and, etc. But again, he's a young guy, so I'm sure, that can be worked on. I'm going to talk about Donovan Clingan here. I've seen most of the online, back and forth is really about Alex Sarr versus Donovan Clingan. I don't see a whole lot of the online community looking at Ricochet, but there's been this big debate about whether you take Klingon or Sar at number one, or whether maybe you trade back a few spots and take Klingon, because it is very interesting. Donovan Klingon, it, you know, with Sar has some of the, they're not the same type of player. So Donovan Klingon, if you don't know, he is a 7'2", 7'3", true big man. He's played at UConn for the last couple of years, and he is a, true defensive anchor, true rim protector. He definitely plays the center position, doesn't really play like Sar, who, again, is more plays in that wing style. Donovan is a true center. He has real size. He is just really big. And, surprisingly moves his feet decently well for his size. I'm not going to say that he's anywhere near, Alex Sar's level or, has a great ability to guard on the perimeter, but he is, more mobile than you might think. And just really does a great job of, protecting the paint and doing what his team needs to do. And then offensively, is actually very surprising. He's, again, maybe not the most, twitchy athlete or guy that's going to be jumping high and finishing, crazy lobs, but he knows how to play the game, the right way. Whether it's making reads in the short roll, making passes, which his passing is actually very interesting for his size especially. But I think he can be, a solid rebounder at the NBA level and gives you solid size and physicality, at the center position. And he can, probably fit in day one and be one of the guys in this draft that is just ready to go from day one. His questions, I do have a lot of questions about him. One, and this is my biggest question, is how many minutes he can play. Especially with an 82 game season, with that body type and his size that he does have, a little bit lack of mobility. He has slow foot speed. He already has had a little bit of, injury concerns. So I'm just wondering how that, his body and physique can actually hold up in an 82 game season. Can he play 30 minutes a night or not? I don't have a lot of confidence that he should be playing more than 20, 22 minutes, which, is very similar to, a Clint Capella that we have now. He is great at what he does, but, he can't really play much more than 25 minutes a game and bring that same level of, athleticism. He's kind of dropping off there. And with, Donovan being so young, he definitely, maybe could get there. Maybe with the training staff, they can help him work on that. But again, it's just a question about how long can he stay on the floor every night, which, is important, especially if you're, going to build a roster around him. If he can only play, 20 minutes, 25 minutes a game, there's still, almost 15 to 20 minutes left that someone else has to play, which, is not necessarily a bad thing, especially if we have a Kongwu. But again, it's a question, do you want to take that guy at number one? So, I would say those are the major positives and questions about the top three. I do want to mention some other guys that I like personally, one being Ron Holland. He just has a lot of athleticism. There's questions about his shot, and but I think it would be interesting. His defensive havoc creating, I would say, on defense is truly interesting. And then just having another, 6'6" guy that is super athletic could always be interesting next to Trae Young. Again, the major question is his shot and some of his decision making. But, you know, with his athleticism, it could be interesting. I don't think he would need to be taken at number one. But, just wanted to mention him as an option. Reed Shepherd is a very, very good player. The Hawks are not probably going to take him just because we already do have Trey and DeJounte, which, of course, one of them may be going, but I don't think they're going to be looking to add another small guard this time around. So we're probably have enough of those already. But yeah, those are the top picks and the guys that they could go with. I'm going to transition here a little bit into, maybe roster construction, trades that could be, what they may do. Because, if you're taking Alex Sarr, right, at number one, I'm imagining you're probably not going to keep Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu. There are other needs with this roster as well. The major needs being point of attack defense, size. They only had a few forwards last year. Sadiq Bey went down, and really all you have is DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, who was also out for quite a while, Onyeka, and Clint. Those are your only real big guys that can play that you want to be playing solid rotation minutes. So, they definitely lack a lot of depth there. But really the concerns, one would be size, forward depth, point of attack defense, and I would throw in there shooting as well, because there's a balance between what you need: size, athleticism, and shooting. A lot of the those can be not always. Like, you can find a player like Gallo, but then of course maybe you're sacrificing athleticism at that spot and defense there. So it's not all the time that you have to sacrifice athleticism, size, or 3-point shooting, but generally the players that are uber athletic, have great size, and can shoot the three are going to be paid 40 plus million a year, right? So those guys aren't just around everywhere. But I think shooting is an area that they need to work on as well, that I don't see a lot of people talking about, because really, I mean, who are the major shooters on this team? Who can shoot it? Trae Young, DeJounte has really improved there. Personally, I think we'll be moving on from DeJounte, so you'll be, potentially losing that. And then Bogey, who really they like coming off the bench. So with the starting lineup, really you have Trae Young, and then DeAndre can hit threes, but he's not like a high volume or elite level shooter that will just, there's a difference between guys that will shoot threes and spot up and shoot it, and then guys that will shoot, no matter if there's a hand in their face or, they're heavily contested, like a Bogey, who, he'll bomb it from anywhere, and he'll take 15 threes, in a game if that's what you need from him that night. So, I think that's an area that maybe isn't talked about as much, but I think really the big two needs, of course, would be point of attack defense and forward depth and size there. And then thirdly, shooting. Now, the roster construction is going to be heavily dependent, around who they do take at number one, right? If they are taking Sarr, you wouldn't imagine that Sarr, Onyeka, and Clint are all going to be on this roster at the start of next season. I know a lot of people, want Clint to be moved on from, which I I can understand he can be a frustrating player to watch. He still does a lot of good things for this team to provide stability, rebounding, which is another area that, a lot of, DeAndre Hunter lacks in that. Really, our two good rebounders, Onyeka lacks in that. Our two good rebounders are Jalen Johnson and Clint Capella. And, other than that, who is it? Who would you qualify as a or classify as a good rebounder on this team? So there is rebounding concerns as well, and again that just goes back to the size of this team, and especially that's going to be needed when you're playing with Trae Young or small guards, that maybe don't have the most physicality. So DJ as well, you know, they do need to figure out what to do between Trey and DJ. I know there's a decent portion of the fan base that, does want Trey to be gone. I think it's pretty ludicrous. He's maybe the best player that the Hawks have ever had in franchise history. So just kind of getting rid of him because he's, 6'1" or maybe too small to be a great defensive player. I think that's pretty silly. He's one of the best advantage creators in the league, one of the best passers in the league, and truly dynamic offensively. He will make, any players around him better offensively. He draws doubles all the time. So he's a very unique player and not, someone that you just want to throw away. So, I would not be of the mind to trade Trey. That is a possibility, but probably something I'm not going to explore too far on this podcast. I do think DeJounte, just they don't work together. And it's really just comes down to that they're two small guards that cannot hold up on the perimeter defensively, so they just don't work great together. Then offensively, there's not a whole lot of chemistry there either, especially with, the way that DJ plays. He wants to be the number one option. He wants to kind of get to his mid-range. He's not necessarily... He's not a great passer in the way that Trey is, to where, he's kicking it out all the time, getting Trey wide open for a corner three that he can knock down. And, maybe some of that is Trey, not moving as well off the ball, but it really comes down to DeJounte's game as well. And, just defensively, they don't fit together. And then offensively, it's not good enough of a fit to make that, to make up for that, the defense. And so I really do feel like you have to pick one of them and probably move on from DeJounte this season or this offseason. And, one thing that's been floated around, one trade idea that I've seen a lot and makes a lot of sense to me actually would be DJ and Clint for Dyson Daniels and Ingram, or some other trade surrounding the Pelicans. I know last year I think they wanted a Kongwu, so again, depending on who we pick, if it's Klingon, maybe you want Clint to be able to mentor him, whatever it may be. Depending on what they do with that number one pick, there could be other options. But I think dealing with the Pelicans or maybe the Pistons could also make some sense. Just someone, that needs solid point guard or center, those type of teams, where you could trade DeJounte to and get some value back, or trade Clint to, maybe even DeAndre Hunter. But again, if we're trading Clint and Hunter and we already have a bad defense, we have to get pieces in place that maybe fit better and do improve the defense, because we can't just trade our best defensive players and then expect to get better next year. which I think is the goal. I think that's, where the front office's headspace is. I think that's where Trey's headspace is, that they want to get better next year. They want to be competitive, get to the playoffs, and have a real chance of, taking a series or two at least. So, I think it's very interesting. There's going to be a lot of options, and, I'll probably wait to do a little bit more about what may happen in free agency, once we do actually select at number one, or, trade the pick there, move down, take Donovan Clingan, Ron Holland, went over that a little bit already, but, I think I'll probably do some more about, roster building and, what may happen in free agency, potential trades they could make in the offseason. I'll do a little bit more about that after we pick at one, but there is certainly a lot of flexibility that they didn't have before they got the number one pick. So it's been an exciting time, and I'm excited to continue this podcast and hope that we can get it to grow a little bit. Again, this is really going to be geared towards every 2 to 4 weeks. It's not going to be the longest episodes, but it'll be good to just talk about what's going around the Hawks and the major topics, and brainstorm a little bit about what they could do. So this will be an interesting off season. I'm excited to be starting this pod, and you can follow me on Twitter at HawksWatch99. But again, this is James Arnold. Thanks for listening.